the Society for Creative Anachronism.
Yeah.
They were very open to gayness. And, you'd go to conventions and you'd see couples like that. But when the furry monk people started showing up at our convention, you'd have couples cuddling all over the lobby.
Yeah.
Not doing anything wrong, but apparently it freaked a few people out.
Probably for the better, to get them pushed out.
Yeah, but the thing is they turn right around and sabotage conventions. And it's very easy to do. Just call the hotel and lie.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to point out that the queer community has played a big role in the convention scene. Like we were talking about how the females are playing a big role with slash fiction, but also a lot of queer females and queer men back during the slash period were also played a big role. That's why a lot of shipping was done with two male characters who were canonically heterosexual, but homosexual in their works. And like I was saying, the Brony fandom, a lot of trans females are heavily involved, and a lot of people distance
I don't think there's anyone of the core committee for BabsCon who's not trans.
Yep.
Yeah.
Same as BronyCon, TrotCon, BabsCon, Equestria LA, even Everfree. I think the only con that doesn't have any specific connections would probably be the one in Dallas right now, HarmonyCon, because it's kind of founded by two more straight Christian guys. But they're the predecessor of Nightmare Nights Dallas, which is founded by trans individuals and queer individuals who came from Furry Fiesta.
Failed con, the one out in, no, it was in Alabama, wasn't it?
Which one?
The failed furry conservative con.
That one.
Anthro. It's another one that uses Anthro. It was a Woo. I think that's what the abbreviation.
I wonder what the queer relationship with that one
was called.
Furry. It was like Free for All.
Free for All. Yeah.
Free for All. Yeah. That. It's funny because like To the Ranting Griffin, he was like Toastmaster at several conferences. The guy was hilarious. He was fun. He was a nice guy. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know where he went wrong.
I was actually looking into this, and I would argue that Antler Northwest was really the thing that got everything started. Like they invited me as a guest to do my panels and stuff, and I had a really bad time there, and I don't do them anymore, which is sad because I love Seattle. But Antler Northwest specifically didn't even want to call itself a furry con. That's why I don't include it in the furry con section, because they said we're specifically anthropomorphic fan con that's family friendly, which is really weird because a lot of the art that they use are done by cub porn artists, even though they try to make themselves out as this nice Christian con.
Like, what they mean by family friendly is like non-queer.
Yeah,
it's like coded language.
It's
coded language.
Because I sell the LGBT flags at my booth, and they did not like that at all. They didn't even like my tarot cards. They thought my tarot cards were offensive against religious people. I was like, there's cute animals on the tarot cards. How can that be offensive at all? But they specifically nailed down on not using the term furry in any of their publication, calling them specifically anthro. And that's when To the Ranting Griffin started saying, I'm no longer a furry, I'm an anthro. And if you read that original tweet, all the comments are, okay, he's pulling an Antler Northwest now, he's pulling an Antler Northwest now. And then that kind of gave way to, I think, a Woo starting Free for All. So I think it was really all around that. But you have to remember Antler Northwest started as a replacement for Rainforest. Yeah. And that was around the same time of Rocky Mountain FurCon being canceled, which was later replaced by Denver. But so all this stuff happened around the same period. But you have to remember, that happened around the same time as Comic Gate, but that had an emphasis because of Gamergate. But then even before then, the science fiction con scene was dealing with the sad puppies and the rabid puppies. Right. So I think these were all a domino chain effect. So people are trying to push out more conservative versus more progressive stuff. So sad puppies, rabid puppies, Gamergate, Comic-Gate, Kick Out Vic with the Vic Mononia thing and the anime cons, then all the other stuff with Rocky Mountain, Antler Northwest and all that stuff. It's big domino chain. That's why I have a chapter just dedicated to that, because it's like it's all influence. And you think because they are all separate conventions and all different fandoms, they're not connected. No, they were definitely a domino effect.
And of course, Tu's partner, very creative person, moved to Poland to teach animation and transitioned. And all of a sudden, Tu started hating trans people.
Oh, so it's definitely like a sort of reactionary to their ex. That's interesting.
And Uncle Kake and Tu used to be really close friends too. which is why I'm surprised Uncle Kage was kind of able to escape this entire circle of everything that was happening, because he was very close with 2, but I think he cut himself off right at the right time.
Kage is public enemy number 1, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I have a
To
lot of
this
issues.
day, he will still state, in front of people, he'll say, eventually I'm going to find the smoking gun that's going to destroy Conference. And what he thinks that is that we publicize Conference as a gay hookup place. He won't find it because it doesn't exist. We never did that.
Which is very sad. But you could see that reaction, like I was saying, turning the pet auction to a charity auction. A lot of the stuff Uncle Kage did have a reverberating effect in the furry fandom in the late 90s, early 2000s.
He literally, in the early 2000s, he scared a lot of young furries out of the fandom.
I was say when I first joined the fandom, I saw the things where he said like the fandom is not like they don't have sex in fursuits and all this stuff, and I got into the fandom because I thought furries were hot. It's like my initial point is from like a gay perspective.
Yeah, as long as you were a male and thought female furries were hot, that was fine.
Yeah, and so I could see the writing on the wall. I could see the dog whistles in his language. I could see the dog whistles from the very beginning, and what was being said wasn't directed at straight people at all. It was all subtly directed towards queer people more than it was towards straight people.
Yeah.
And it's like the terminology, like calling us degenerates. At the time, that was like the irony of the word degenerate it meant gay person. Literally on Tumblr, we were using it ironically to describe ourselves. And so it's like, I knew this person was online. I knew that he had like a frame of reference for understanding how we were talking about it. And I remember the yaoi community at the time calling themselves degenerates was like a big thing at that moment.
Actually, that's why I find it's a weird irony with the situation, because if you think about the anime cons and the furry cons coming out of the Cartoon Fantasy organization, the anime cons still to this day, like I skipped the slide, but people still wear Nazi uniforms at anime cons at cosplay. They have the yaoi paddles. They have rows and rows of body pillows, dondenshi, yaoi for anyone just to pick up and see. But people still invite kids to the cons. There's no 18 plus section at anime cons. Anyone could pick up these yaois and dondenshi.
Right, like
these body
Hetalia
pillows.
was a thing.
Yeah, but they don't get called the sexual deviants. It's the furries who get called the sexual deviants, even though the anime cons, I would argue, is doing it much worse than what the furries are.
That was because of the animal language.
Well, it's also because of the relationship with women.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the media was sexualizing women.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
So socially, that's far more acceptable.
Did you hear about the controversy over the short run anime series Interspecies Reviewers?
No.
Somebody did this anime series. It was commissioned. Almost all the miniseries now are commissioned by networks. And they did this thing that was a send up of all of the horny, what do you call them? The derogatory term for anime fans in Japan.
Oh, otaku?
Yeah, horny otakus. And they did this thing where it takes place in this Sinosure city that's a center for all the fantasy D&D type stuff.
Okay.
So all the characters you see in a D live in this city together. And of course they have a red light district.
Right.
Where you can find anything
Anything in the fantasy realm, yeah.
Right. And it basically involves a couple of adventurers who rescue this angel that's being attacked by this monster, and discover the angel has a broken halo, and he can't get back to heaven.
Okay.
So they go, well, hang out with us. We'll see if we can figure out a way to help you. So they go into town, and they're celebrating their victory, so they take him to a brothel. And he's like, so later they go to the tavern in town, which is, the proprietor is this cute bird girl, but don't mess with her. She's one of those anime girls.
Yeah.
And they're sitting around talking about this brothel. And they notice people at the other tables are like, listening in. So one of them, as a joke, gets a piece of parchment and starts writing a review of the brothel. and asks his friends, give various points like I'm doing here. And other guys are going up there looking over their shoulder at this, and they throw a coin on the table. Thanks for the advice, you know? And when there's a pile of coins, they go, hey,
We got a good idea.
this is legit. So they post it on the wall, and they start going to all the brothels and reviewing them.
Yeah.
But what it's actually about is just they're a bunch of lewd, lascivious degenerates. And the people who are in the brothels they're business people, right?
Yeah.
They're doing their thing. And it becomes a game of can you top this? Things get wilder and crazier
Oh, okay,
and whatever
okay.
as the story goes along. The series premieres, like on Crunchyroll, and this small group of fans explodes. You can't put this up on Crunchyroll. It's horrible. It's disgusting. And it's like, wait a minute. You can find any number of animes where women are tortured, dismembered, raped, whatever. But this thing where it makes the guys look bad
It's
is
suddenly the
disgusting.
problem. Yeah.
To the point that the original commissioners canceled the commission. So the studio is like, what are we going to do? We can't finish the project. And eventually another network stepped in and said, we'll give you the money. You can finish it.
Okay.
And they finished it. But you won't see this on any of the world
Streaming.
anime sites,
Yeah.
streaming sites, because of this row by a few people.
A
who
very
got their
small
nose
group
buried.
controlling the media experience of everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like the major trend we're seeing today. Last 10 years, it's happening in everywhere you look. 5 parents getting every book about queer people removed from a library.
Yeah.
And then when the library wins a court case to get them back, the local government just defunds them.
Yeah.
It's like clear.
I would recommend you. I have on my main channel. So if you go to Con History, if you look through related channels, click Transformative. I
Okay.
have a panel called Creating Transformative Art, which actually talks about that division of art as a commodity or entertainment versus art as like experience. I go into the complete history from the early shamanism to oral storytelling, all the way to fan fiction and copyright laws, about how art has been treated differently throughout the years and how legal issues are involved with art, and how you had to kind of preserve that pure Alan Moore form of art that people like, aside from the commercialism and as a commodity. And I think that will kind of give you a lot of ideas and areas you might want to
Yeah,
check out
I'm
for
really
your
fond
stuff.
of like the Glenn Arneson definitions of art versus craft. And
So I actually made, I don't think anyone else has done it, but I made a chart in that panel specifically called so I used to call it transformative versus derivative, but I call it derivative versus subversive art, and then transformative versus escapist art. And it's a quadrant, and I say you could map almost any single story or fan fiction or movie in the world into this
when you say
quadrant.
subservient, are you referring to function, or are you referring to like media?
No, subversive. So it's an art form that kind of shakes or wakes.
Oh,
It's
right,
like-
right,
So,
so-
most deconstructions will fall under that
Yeah.
category. So BoJack Horseman, Watchmen would fall under the
Oh,
transformative
well,
versus subversive
the
category.
spectrum
for
I'm
example.
talking about is like when you have a mug
Yeah.
and you put imagery on the mug.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, if it's a mug, generally speaking, you need to be able to use it as a mug.
Yeah.
And so artworks that are fine art focus on the creative expression and communication of meaning above any function.
Yeah.
So they basically produce what are essentially, from a functional perspective, non-functional objects other than their stated goal. Well, any kind of media, like a t-shirt, your COVID mask, a mug, a badge, a commission, all have to focus on the functionality of that medium first, followed by communication of meaning.
Yep.
And so those are four under the main envelope. They're called craft.
Yeah.
Those are craft
Check out my
objects.
panel. I did cover all that
Yeah.
stuff. It's
But,
an
like, this
hour and a half
definition-
panel.
Yeah, but this definition is very important, that the people making this distinction are not making a distinction of hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
They're making a distinction of class. So they're saying fine art is a form of art and is not more valuable than craft. They are both of equal value from like our perspective. From
And a lot of art ends up being transmitted to craft,
yeah, and so
especially now.
Yeah.
If you went to art to a dealer's room in our day, you would see artists selling prints. You would see an art show, and almost all of the art at the convention was sold out of the art show.
Yep.
But like also in
That's
this
on my
definition,
chart how
Yeah.
furry cons kept the art show. Some anime cons did, but they eventually excised
yeah,
it.
but under this definition, under Glenn Arneson's definition, most of Rembrandt's works are not fine art; they are craft because they were commissioned to be representational icons for those people to increase their status in society.
Right.
They were not meant for meaning making, which he finds as a very important distinction.
That's basically my panel. So
Yeah.
it's transformative versus derivative, talking about art as a message and meaning, or art as a form of
Are
entertainment.
either of you on VR chat?
No,
I am not.
unfortunately.
Something very interesting just happened on VR chat. A friend of mine, Sololo, who is a game designer, graphic artist, and has done work for a museum. He did a interactive game for the aquarium in Sarasota, Florida.
Okay.
He goes to a lot of art museums, and he said, furry fandom needs a serious art museum.
Oh, actually, that's like a huge criticism. I'm in the fine arts. I do some furry art, but most of my art is non-representational. Like it's not anthropomorphic.
So he thought, well, I can't lease a building and have contractors come in, but I can learn Unity and I can build this sucker.
Oh, a
on
digital
chat.
one. Yeah. Well, we do have some furry artists that have transcended and are in the fine art realm.
Yeah.
So Beth Cavender-Stichter is a great example. She is a furry, and she sells her sculptures for $10,000 plus.
Yeah.
And she's a ceramicist, which is another one of undervalued arts, is ceramics.
But that was actually my original idea of my con history project, was making a virtual museum that you could actually walk through and see the history of that stuff. And it's funny because San Diego Comic-Con made their own Comic-Con museum after I was pitching it to them for years, and now they don't even want me on board. But no, that's why I was really wanted to do like a digital archive and museum.
Basically, he made the thing, and then he went to get artists. He was not going to put any art in there without permission.
Right.
Which is good.
Well, also, like when you're talking fine arts, you have to, a big conversation around fine art is intended, where does it live?
Yeah.
And where was it intended to live versus where it lives? So like, you go into a museum and you look at all these Greek vases and ancient statues, they have all been removed from their original intentions.
Right.
And so they lose a feature of their meaning making. But like most contemporary artists make artworks intended for basic musicological spaces.
Yeah.
They create isolated objects. And so when you make a museum, one of the important things of what you think about in the contemporary context is you tell artists you want them to make work for the
Am
museum.
I too late to ask you to do me a tarot reading?
I could probably do it later after. So I'll be checking out the room parties later tonight. I'll probably be doing them there.
Where?
I think around building 25 or 26 is probably where I'll be.
Okay.
So I need to get my tarot reading.
I
done, which is
wanted
my
to
room.
ask you, I know I'm super late.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I'll probably be there up tonight because this is the last day for the
What
room
was
parties.
interesting
Okay.
is when he started putting
Like,
artists in
what
the
room
museum,
party?
Yeah.
I'll
other
be
artists
migrating
said,
around, probably
if you put
building
that artist
25
in the
or
museum,
26.
you got to take my stuff out.
All right,
Oh,
well,
that's a
I'll
really
be
bizarre.
around if
One of
fate
the artists
has
he
it.
put in was
Good.
Thank you.
Panda Paco, whose most of his themes involve young characters.
Ah,
They're not doing anything sexual.
now
They're
this
young characters.
is not. This is so much in the so. Just this week, a French artist produced a work. She's an abstract painter, and she's very upset about the Ukraine war. It has something very personal to her, and so she had a piece about the forced rape of individuals in Ukraine during one of the specific Russian invasions. And so she has a person tied up and being forced to fillet a Russian soldier in her new painting. And she had to go to went to the French Supreme Court on whether or not this is allowed. And they ruled in her favor. It is allowed. But the museum on its own, external of it, did a PR campaign, and their sponsor staff decided that they were going to put like a dozent, so no children are allowed, in the room that this painting is displayed, because they didn't want like the inappropriate content being seen by a child. But the French court had the very elegant statement about what was being displayed here. They said, of course it is displaying a scene of rape because it is a piece critiquing it.
Yes.
And they said that it is beyond any reasonable doubt that this piece is a form of critique and not like a sexualization or like pedophilic representation.
That's a big part of my transformative art panel is most people miss the idea that the critique is the most important thing.
Well, context is extremely important in art.
But if you look at every single fan fiction that was put to court cases, the only ones that were allowed to be legally published were critiques of the original work they were based off of.
Well, like under Glenn Arneson's, like if you talk about subversive art,
Yep.
all subversive art, like if you make a subversive craft object, it has to be fine art. It is forced to be that way. So if you make a mug that you can't drink out of, it cannot be a mug.
See,
Therefore, it has to be
that's
fine
why I
art.
have the quadrant, because I don't think all subversive art falls in that category. So, for example, you could say the Saw movies are very subversive because it puts all this gore in front of your face, but it doesn't have any inherent like transformative message. I would say it would be a escapist subversive art. So, I mean, there's.
Well, I mean,
places where
Glenn
people
doesn't
go.
talk about like escapist versus like meaning making is not about what minutia you do
Yeah.
in the making of meaning.
Because my
meaning
thing is
making
focused
a
on
quality.
narrative. Yeah, so I do a transformative versus escapist because I focus specifically on narrative arts. And specifically, I like the Alan Moore definition of artists as
Alan Moore.
shamans. So that's plays a big role. So everything I do is re-looking at everything based on Alan Moore's definition of a
Yeah,
shaman.
don't consider Alan Moore a historian though, because
Oh, I don't think he's a
Anthropology
historian.
is just really just like the way he describes ancient art.
Yeah, I don't think of him as a historian. I think of him like the equivalent of like the modern philosopher I'm going based off now. Like a lot of my
well, he has an
theories-
ontology that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it makes sense to me, and I like his idea, but he got me into looking at what Grant Morrison says, because Grant Morrison sees art in a very similar way, but has a complete opposite reaction of how he does art. That's why Grant Morrison stuff is more reconstruction, or Alan Moore's more deconstructive, but both of them were, again, inspired by
Right,
Michael
but like,
Moorcock.
be
And-
very careful about
Yeah.
like deconstruction art because like the postmodern definitions are so
Yeah,
variant. Like, because I'm actually I personally like associative deconstruction. So
Yeah.
like no deconstructionist who wrote pre 2005 talks about associative art.
Yeah,
Like
so
associative
that's
art
why
doesn't
my- yeah,
exist.
that's why my
Like, there's like a
panel, I have all these
category.
different
It's an entire way of
definitions.
thinking that they just ignored because they said it either has to be A or B. When associative art is like associations. It's about things that you feel in association. It's not hard meaning making.
Yeah.
And so like saw, you could evaluate it through associative systems. So you could say like, oh, it has this feathery effect of meaning making with all these different things it's pulling from.
Yeah.
And then you can say like 2 threads are subversive and 2 threads aren't.
Yeah.
And things like that.
Like another one I put in the subversive escapist category is Last Jedi. I personally love Last Jedi. I think it's one of the best of the new Star Wars. But I'll put in the same category of Star Wars of the Saw franchise. And it's not to say I like that category specifically bad. It says you can have works that you both enjoy and don't enjoy in these different categories, and they all kind of pull from the same specific
Well, like for
source.
Saw, another criticism I would give is like, what emotion can we say the film is attempting to evoke? Because that like is a core meaning making
But
system.
also, is it making a critique? Does it have a message? Is it purely escapism, or is it trying to do something more than escapism? And I think a lot of artwork can be judged, specific narrative art, on these different platforms. And that's actually why I specifically point out in my I didn't point out this time, but I say how the furry cons are so unique in comparison to the other ones. Because when you look at all the other conventions I cover, they are either franchise-based, like My Little Pony or
Well, they're
Star Trek.
subservient to a media that's independent
They
of
are-
themselves.
Yeah, comics, anime, science fiction, fantasy, these are all genres or industries. Furries are the only ones that are so unique because they don't have one solid franchise they are based off of, or one
But it's also
solid genre or
directionality.
medium.
So like directionality, like
Gentlemen are
Disney
still here.
Disney produces,
Nobody here all
and then
night.
the consuming side consumes and then reverberates.
I mean, it's very clever that Ash decided to call her film The Fandom.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're
Because it's not any other fandom, it's pure fandom.
we're cyclical.
Yeah.
Internal systems churn, producing internal things that are vastly different than the source material, more than any other of the fandoms.
As I try to put it to people, like, because people ask me, like, what's this furry thing about? I'm like, okay, so here's what you do. You don't like yourself. Or at least I didn't. But you make a thing, and you become a fan of that thing you created. And then that reflects back on yourself, and you like yourself because you made the thing.
Well,
and
so-
it's all just
That's
self-expression
what
in
the,
the end.
I think that's the
Well,
summary of
and-
the Great to Be Different
And then
song. It's essentially that.
Charlie is like working on a definition of what is a furry, and he says that furry is an aesthetic.
Yeah.
And so you know it when you see it,
Yeah.
and that's an aesthetic evaluation. So he says it's not a specific media, it's not a specific thing. It's one of those things. Like everyone that's a furry, you can show them a sample of images of anthropomorphic characters, and you can say, "Is that a furry?" And they can say yes or no,
Yeah.
and they'll
Right.
probably get it 99% correct.
Right. It's that meme online. Like,
And so it's an
that's how big
aesthetic.
furry
We
is, this
know-
picture.
That was the other way that Rodney and I realized we were dealing with only this special, aesthetic.
Yeah.
Only.
Only.
Is we would go to little comic conventions, local ones, and they gave fan tables away for free.
Yes.
And we're promoting our convention. And we would have portfolios of artwork out for people to look at. And people would go by and they'd go, walk away. Almost everybody. But occasionally, somebody would come by, they would open and just,
Well, there's this weird,
And they'd stare and they'd go,
there's this
and
mysterious
we
quality.
noticed this time and again, and Rodney and I would go, got one.
Yes, exactly.
But it's that mysterious quality of like
steal you
when
for a
when a
quick
non-furry
What's up?
draws a furry,
Yeah.
all of us can see that their drawing
I'm
is
probably
not
gonna be going
quite
as soon
a
as
furry.
everyone's
Yeah, it's
done.
not white, yeah.
Yeah, but
I wanted
there's
to
something
talk
about
more
the
about Tara.
very
You're open.
subtleties, like of when your brain has absorbed 10,000
sure.
animal faces,
Yes.
anthropomorphized animal faces.
Probably
There is a
tomorrow,
certain
because I do
vernacular
want
that we
to head
develop
out soon.
that you
Okay,
know
what
when
did
it
you
is
wanna
or it
talk about
isn't.
with Taro?
And that's
I
something
mean,
magical.
For me, I feel
because
like
that's
I
all
did my
internal. Like
share
no
of
company
research,
gave that to us.
and I felt like you
We
put
gave it to
together, like, a
ourselves.
super succinct
We
summary.
wrote the
I
language.
think
The language wasn't
your
handed to
insight
us
into
like
6 elements
you know every other
was, like,
fandom.
Yeah,
crazy
and there was
to me,
something.
because
Pepper,
it
you
makes
actually said like a
sense,
few years
like,
back, one of the cons I was like,
uh,
one of the
the
things
Western
that makes the
elements
fandom is that
have
like
mixed
there is
wood
no big
and
daddy
metal
Hasbro who
into
can come and say, well,
Yeah.
party's over,
That's
we're
why
moving on to the
there's a lot
next
of
project.
competition.
You
Yeah.
could, in theory, remove
And
any of
similarly,
the major
on the
media
eastern
companies
side,
that has contributed to
they
furries,
split up
and it would
doesn't
continue
matter.
on fine without them.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
Like the
probably
Japanese
remove
sometimes
all of
had their
them.
own equivalent to
And we
air,
would
but
make-
yeah,
we
the
would probably
Chinese
be fine
specifically
either
don't
way.
have air.
The core furries would not
Sometimes
be.
air is
It
split
would not
between
change
the different
anything.
ones.
Yeah,
It's
you
like
were talking
metal,
about
a
vernacular,
little bit
like,
metal.
The important thing
Low
is like,
metal,
we do have
low
our own
wood.
slang. I get in trouble with my
Yeah,
friends all the time
so,
because I'll
like,
be like, oh yeah, with this
I
pop
try
fur,
to
and they're
come
like,
up
why do
with
you
a
have to call
system
it
that separates all
pop fur?
6.
Why can't
and
you
like,
just
what would
call it
that
like an
pterodactyl look
influencer or
like?
something like?
No, we
And,
have
like,
an
because
internal
it's so
vernacular.
obvious
Yeah.
to
Yeah, we
each
have a
other.
slang, and
But
slang is important
does it
because
feel
it
similar
keeps
for
it.
you?
It makes us a
Community.
social group.
Yeah, it keeps the
Let me see if I
community
have
safe.
the,
It proves that a
and
person
also,
is belonging
your
in the process of
PowerPoint,
liminality
can we,
to
like,
reach
can I get a
acceptance
copy
within
of
that
it?
group.
Well, we
I
also
could try to
bend the
find it.
language to our needs. So like
Yeah.
we need the language to do
your
something,
little cheat sheet,
and we're
like,
just
I could have made
making
one of
it
my
do that.
own.
Exactly. Of course, with a little cringe because it's furry and
I
we're
could
all a
have
little
done.
silly.
And a lot of the people.
The cringier, the better.
The cringier the better.
A lot of, there's very little, with the exception of the so-called poppy furs, there is very little self-promotion in the fandom.
It's not necessary in the same manner that it is out
Exactly.
externally. Yeah.
Like, you know, people, who runs Amazon? Oh,
There we go.
Uncle Kage runs Amazon. This is because Uncle Kage, Samuel Conway, did a whole bunch of self-promotion.
Well,
He got other people to help self-promote himself. And that's what
hear
happened.
this
He
whole
doesn't
time?
run.
Yeah.
Anthrocon hasn't for years.
Why?
The committee runs it. He's a figurehead.
Well, in many
I have a
ways, in
bunch
the
of
furry
pterodactyls
fandom, the
I was
gods are
working
still
on. Let me
alive
see if I can
amongst
find
us.
Yeah. And the
also,
thing
I'm
is,
so mad because I base a lot of my study on the Rider Week.
that,
But I feel like you're right. The top
you know,
deck
ask
is
someone,
more accurate. to-
Method Fur Fest is the biggest
Like a
convention in the world.
stereotype.
Who runs it? I don't know. I have no idea who runs it. That's the way it is. We put on conference. It's like, who runs conference? Nobody but the hotel knew.
But I like that lack of hubris. That's, I think, one of the things that makes furries good and interesting to me is that, yeah, there are poppy furs, but there's no one that rises up to celebrity status in the truest form in furries.
I think
And like not to the point of not being approachable, or to the point of like being able to wall themselves off from everyone else. That
so
doesn't
this
exist.
was the division
And
I
also-
have.
also the
So
thing, like,
all
you
the
know,
10 cards are divided by. So you have
Wouldn't you
the.
raise to like a certain level of celebrity status, like once you
Let me
become
take
a
it in for a
Jira
second.
or something?
And then you're a betrayer of the culture.
A little
So
bit,
this is
but there's also- it's
so
a
I
bit
have
betrayer
it's
if you
basically
don't give
cyclet, so
back.
the ace
Like,
would
the
lead back
people
into
who ascend to a
one,
certain
and I
point,
had each
and
of
you
the
see
numbers
this a lot with
represented
rappers,
by
too.
a
Once
different
you get to a
name.
point,
So
your
the
community
two
came from kind
of
of expects
the
you
two
to
of Earth, for example, will be
give
called
back
the
in
Messenger
some
of
way, like
Earth,
uplift the
the Water of
community
Earth, the
too.
Death of
And if you don't do
Earth,
that,
the
then
Warrior
you're
of Earth,
a
the
traitor,
Adversary,
and
the
that's
Then you're
Child, the
out,
Mother, the
right.
Father,
Yeah.
the Old King, and the Old
You're a
One.
You don't
celebrity,
want
but
to keep
not
it as
what
a
you want to
numbers.
be.
Keep it-
Well, the numbers are
You
still
become
there,
very well
but
known for
But
the
you
wrong
want the
reasons.
but you want the cards to
Remember
be
where you
called
came
the
from.
mother.
Yes.
yeah, actually, only all of them will have their all of them will
one of my
have
personal interests is
their
like the
god
way
name. Each of them are
furries
associated
interact
with a
with,
god. I think only
fine
air
arts.
is the only
'Cause,
one
like,
that will
in
have
some
it.
ways, we're, like,
because
an
a lot
easy
of the
in,
air
and then
specifically
we're not, like, a
is
very
Abrahamic
easy not
characters,
in
and I've
into
seen
the fine art
that
world.
might be considered offensive if I use it.
Because
so
right now, like, for
only
instance, queer and identity
air or
politics are
heaven will
very,
be the ones that
very
have
big in the art
these
world.
names.
Right.
Like it's like one of the
Wait, why-
major
why not just
things
call
that
it, like,
museums
the Ada
we call it the
plants,
great
like the Ada
compensation.
water?
Be-
So museums
it
are
will
like,
be it. So there'll
"Oh,
be
look at
the
our
the title
history
will be
book.
the
We've only
8
had
of
3 black
plants
artists.
on the top,
Okay,
and then
we
the
have
bottom
to
one will be
compensate
Yeah,
for
to
what
do-
we've
yeah,
done.
okay.
Right.
And so we don't have any queer artists. We don't have any
Push back
trans
with the-
artists
oh, 'cause you
in
don't have
our
the major
backlog in this
arcana Arcana
museum.
in yours.
And
Yeah,
so
because
right
this
now,
one is not major
I
arcana.
see.
So like I
same
said, the
university
major
faculties,
arcana and
they're
the
looking at,
court
they're
cards
analyzing
are
who have we
incorporated
never
into
hired,
this.
and they're
So
like saying,
basically,
we
this
better
is the
compensate
court
for what
cards
we've
right
been doing
here.
wrong.
7 to 10.
And it's
Yeah,
like right
7
now
to
is a
10,
great time
and the
for
10
just to
is the
pursue
child,
fine art, or to
mother,
demand
father, and then
that
the
we are
old king.
considered fine art.
So, for example, if we
what
look
Solana
here, we
was
could see
doing is
Zeus,
he was trying to
Odin,
have a
God the Father,
museum
Moroni,
dedicated
and
to
Osiris,
fine art
Yeah.
with
that
their
happened to
wives,
be
respective
furry.
wives,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
their
And
respective
it's a
sons,
beautiful
who were kind
collection,
of the
but he
saviors
kept
of each of the respective
Paco's art
areas.
That like redeemed
because
their
he thought
dad's
it was
mistake.
very
Kind of.
important.
Yeah, the adversary, which
And
is
a lot of
6,
other
so I
artists
moved
left.
mine to here.
And he had to get other artists to pull
The
in the
death
places.
card, because 4 in Chinese
Then
is deaf. You
he
have the
ran
deaf
into
gods of
me,
each of these
and I was
pantheons.
telling him about
But
the
also as a
history, and I
movement,
said,
so
"Well,
you
you can
have
go to
the
this
most
site
default of the pagan
my
gods
other
from
partner
the
made to
original
look up all these documents."
Indo-European
Yeah.
gods, which are represented by
went,
the Greek-Roman gods
"I've
that
gotta
were the
include this somehow.
descendants
I don't
of
know
the
how."
original
So he
ones.
talked to
Then when you move
somebody
east,
who knew Unity
this
better
is where
than
you
he
get
did.
the more
And the
Hindu
person said,
inspired
"Why don't you
gods,
have
Hindu
a
and Buddhism.
table of
Then you move
Like a reading
north,
room.
and that's
Yeah.
where you
and
get
put
the
a
Norse
viewer
gods.
there
The Viking,
that
yeah,
you
Norse
can
stuff.
zoom
Then
in
you
the
move
document,
to
look at it.
heaven. This is
Entity.
the
And
Christian,
what-
Judeo-Christian.
is that even
Then you move
possible
west, and it's
in
interesting because this is where this is
Yeah, I can show you
Americas,
how to do
but
it.
starts
also
with
great
the
because, like,
native
sometimes
traditional
you go into an
gods,
archive
and then starts moving
and
up
you
to
walk
more
in,
modern
there's just
cults.
Wait, why
books,
why
wall
is
to
the
wall, or the digital
warrior,
equivalent.
Right.
the God
It
of
is
War empty?
completely.
I'm sure they have
Oh
a God
yeah,
of War.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, on what
I
you're
think
supposed
it's
to do.
in here. It's
Like, which
I
one do
have
I grab?
I
Which
think
one
it's
do I do? And
somewhere
they're
in
like,
there.
there's,
I think I've
fear of missing out,
I think
there's
I
this, like,
shifted it
feeling
slightly.
of, you know, you get that
So
Yeah,
feeling
because
of
I
where
feel
you're
like-
grabbing
Yeah.
the for one
No,
second,
No,
grabbing
actually,
it
this
for
is
another
technically the
second.
God of
But, like,
War, but
sometimes
he's also
you
their
have the opportunity
adversary.
to-
So it's actually
Yeah,
set
sure.
is also
Like,
technically the God of War,
museological
but he's also the
curatorship is to say,
adversary.
like,
So I had
okay,
to change
I'm gonna
some
hand
of
you
it.
Well, I mean, 'cause
5 documents
this only
at
works
random,
if each culture
pulled
got
from
everything
a
right.
server
Yeah,
list
but
or
that's
something.
the West.
the
And then
problem
now
with this
you only
one
get to choose
is
from 5.
Yeah.
these ones
You're not
are
gonna
based
worry
off
about the rest.
specific.
Well, that's what-
These
that's
ones
what
are based off
research
specific
librarians
pantheons,
do.
It's
but
like their
full.
specialty.
it's the
yeah.
east
like,
and
me
west
having,
that
like,
is
an
an
academic
agglomeration
background,
of
it's
the
like
different
you
ones,
learn how
specifically
to
Hindu and
transcend
Buddhism,
that barrier.
and this is
But I'm not gonna say
specifically
it is a-
traditional
it's a barrier.
native
It's a
traditions,
huge barrier.
and
You
but
get-
then
you-
it's
I,
also a
like, do research,
timeline
and I finally
because it's
find
a
the book I need
timeline
to
of
read.
how
I
traditional
ordered it on Amazon. It shows up
cultures
as 1,000
evolved in
pages.
America.
And this is my
Then it moves into
special
the more
interest.
modern
Yeah.
stuff,
It's
and it's
still
in a
like-
category of
And
how
I, you know,
modern
I,
stuff
first
evolved.
week I'm flipping randomly
okay.
through
But
this
this-
thing
this
like I don't know
for me is a
English,
yellow card.
and then
Yeah.
suddenly you have to just let
How
your,
can you be sure
your,
you're not
your
just trying to,
training come in and just
you know,
go
fit the story,
chronologically
fit the
or
pattern,
find a
of,
way
like,
to traverse
wanting
it.
to have
Years ago,
each slot
Savannah
filled in.
Public
Because they're all
Maybe
kind
they
of
didn't have it
they're all
then.
kind of
Right
perfect.
when 800
Because I look at it, and that's
Well,
why.
with this
Yeah.
one,
They had
Yeah,
a
this one is the
call
one that
research
originally
librarian
it was the Hawaiian god
anytime,
Ku,
day or night,
who was their
24 hours a
god
I
day.
of
would
war.
be that librarian.
So I
that would say,
usually use
I'm gonna get out of
Ku
bed
here,
for you and
but
find the book you're
again,
looking
this
for.
is an old one. Like
Okay.
I think the updated one is probably better. This is the only one I can find that's
And
compatible.
there'd be a research
Yeah.
librarian.
And then it
Yeah.
goes back in
It was
cyclet
great.
because the Egyptian gods are also the old one. So it's a cyclet
It's a shame
cycle.
that those
But the
days
Egyptian
have
gods
come
are
and gone.
represented in how they were seen in the modern day.
But we do
So
have
because
some
of the
improvements
ancient
with the
alien
digital
stuff,
library.
this is
Yeah.
why
I
everything
admit,
is all
I'm
kind of cyclic.
taking it back every
So
time
this
I
is
find
just
out that
my
this thing
symbolism
I
for
didn't
each
know I
of
could
these.
find
Okay,
is as a
so
digital
there's
copy somewhere for free.
10.
You know,
Yeah.
properly
60 cards
cataloged
in
and
there.
respected.
Exactly 60.
So
Region of time.
what you don't
when
lose
only
information in the
things
other whatever
got on the
60
internet
whatever.
Because I'm not
Certain
copying what the
people had
major
the
arcana is supposed to be.
gumption
I
and the
I
drive to
insert
put
it
it
there,
up.
so it's
Yeah.
a perfect
And there
number.
weren't enough
In
people with
Chinese
different interests
tradition,
doing
60
it.
is
It is
a
a
perfect
big-
cycle.
You couldn't
So I think this is
find.
arguably a
But I
better
noticed
perfect
a few
cycle
years
with
later, I
that.
could find more
I would
stuff.
agree.
Yeah,
And a few
and in
years
fact,
later,
the
even more.
pushback
That's
book
one
I
of
was
the reasons
talking
that
about
makes me
also
feel
had
old, is when I
60
do, like, a
images.
big sweeping
So originally I
research
was
of
trying to
something, 5
incorporate
years
them in
pass,
here, but I
and
realized
looked
it
at
was
I'm like,
forced.
no,
That's
I'm
why I
not gonna
didn't
find
force
anything
it.
new. And then I
But each of them will
Google
still
the
have
most
symbolism
basic
that
form
kind
of the
of
search
echoes
query.
what their
And I
equivalents
find
in
it
all
in
these
archive.
different decks
Or I
are.
find like something ridiculously
And like the
well,
abstract, or are you
well
gonna draw
constructed.
like these
And it's
specific?
like, why did
Yeah,
I do
I'll
that
draw
5
them-
years ago?
I'll draw
I
the
drove myself
gods
crazy
as
doing this, and I could have just
poetic
Googled
as
it
I think
today.
they
I mean,
should be
I mean,
represented.
sure.
So these are like if you were if you
So,
want to grab one of
sick
these
and
cards and
tired
make it like your
of
patron
reading
saint
on
and keep it in your
sites.
pocket,
Sure.
that's how beautiful I want them to
Originally, there was
represented.
this wholesome,
It's
funny
very
animal
ambitious, for
fandom,
sure.
and
Yeah,
the
I
furries came
I've
around
had
and
this in
ruined
the
it.
works since 2011, so this is over
And
10
he
years
said,
old right now.
That is it.
Yeah,
is
no,
a
but
really-
this is like I
Having
applaud. I see the value and I see the amount of
Went
time.
into
it
our
goes.
garage, started digging
But I feel like
stuff
once
out
you
of
fill in
filing
like a good like
cabinets,
60%, the
we
rest is like okay,
3,000
yeah, I can see.
documents and put it
Yeah,
on
there's some other
the old
one. Like I'm working on a new
conference
one,
That's
so
the
I
value
some
of
of my
that
other
dear
stuff is
fursuiter.
transformation and shapeshifters
And
around
burlesque.
different cultures.
Like, that is
So
the
I also
value
have
of that
a
image,
shapeshifter
is that
deck that
it's
I've
a
been
single
working on.
image
Let me
that
see.
pierces at the
And this one
center
also
of that
basically, so I
argument
took the
and
template
just
that I
stabs a
used
hole in it
there,
saying,
and I
"No,
really like
here's
the
a
template I
very
made, so
early
I
image,
adapted it
very,
here as
very
well.
beginnings, and
So
is
this
an image
one's
of
a
what
very
was
similar.
happening there.
Basically uses my original template and just
So
create it
he
over here
opened
as
his
well, and it
museum
has
on
the
April
same
2nd.
elements
It's a huge
basically,
hit.
and all the different
And,
shapeshifters are
I'm actually
represented here
going
as
to,
well. And this is the one I really like because I found
Florida
trickster
for,
gods in each of these cultures
Megaplex
that perfectly
to put a
represented
presentation on with
all
him
that stuff.
Awesome.
for the convention.
So
But
Yeah, I mean, I think
Shanga
it's very
interview
meaty, so
on
it'll be fun to
his
like
TikTok.
dive into
He did
where
a
these
little
countries and
TikTok
cultures
stream.
are.
Yeah,
and
you
stuff.
can even see I already had
Got
the major accounts
thousands
here.
of
Let me, like, sit
viewers, even though it lasts.
I do
like
actually have to
Oh
go
yeah,
five
soon,
minutes.
okay,
so.
Yeah.
for sure.
And then,
But yeah, that's kind of it. But I haven't released it publicly yet, so it's just.
What?
Yeah.
That's the power of
um,
TikTok.
yeah.
Yeah.
Please
And then,
do. I think it'd be
Twitch.
such a.
I think when I have the cards done, I'll release it.
Revolutionary.
Yeah.
Wait, but like, do you let people talk about this? You mean 60 card deck?
Toby Fox
No,
or
it's, I
something
think
like
it's
that?
only my thing. I put it in my
Did an
stories, but I
entire
don't see anyone
tour.
talk about it.
Because it makes
Follow
sense.
No 8 Million, this 4-hour tour.
I'm gonna try to apply it in my own personal practice.
Okay, sounds
Yeah.
good.
Because every piece